What's your secret that you'll take to your grave but can share anonymously here? I saw my niece's first steps. I did not tell anyone anything, and then, when a couple of hours later she went again, this time in front of her parents, I acted surprised. My parents neglected their dog terribly, so I just stole it and gave it to a shelter. They were furious, but the dog was actually starving. I never admitted to anyone that it was me. I also stole a dog once. It was a small Chihuahua estate that lived in our neighborhood. She was completely emaciated, and on top of that she was wearing a huge flea collar, designed for a dog 4 times her size. We think the neighbor's kids bullied her because she was terrified of children. Anyway, I took it and gave it to my wife's relatives. She is now about 16 years old and still living a great life. She's well-fed, contented, and happy. I filed a Child Protective Services report against my lifelong best friend. I came to visit her at home after she had children, and it was just a nightmare. The carpet was soaked with old animal excrement. He even turned white in places. The smell of cat urine was noticeable even at the entrance. 2 girls had severe coughing fits due to the terrible air. Mold, blood, dirt, waste, all this was mixed up everywhere. While I was with her, I secretly took pictures of everything, and the next day I filed a complaint. After this, my friend called me in tears and told me that her children had been taken away from her and would not be returned until she proved that she could put the house in order and maintain it in good condition. I pretended I had nothing to do with it. In the end, she put everything in order, and her children were returned to her. The kids didn't deserve to live in such terrible conditions, and I don't feel the slightest bit guilty about what I did, but I will never tell her it was me. I also want to add that I helped her tidy up the house so that she could get her children back. I love her very much. She just needed serious help, both psychological and physical. When my grandfather had his first heart attack and went into a coma, things looked really bad. My uncle went to his house, supposedly to check his accounts, but in reality, he started digging around. He found his grandfather's investment portfolio and discovered that he had almost $3 million in savings and investments. In just a few days, all hell broke loose. My mother and her siblings had a falling out and literally started squabbling among themselves over who would get what after his death. But then my grandfather unexpectedly started to recover. He woke up, spent several months recovering, and then returned home. After some time, he told his family that he had been semi-conscious the whole time, heard them swearing, and decided that none of them would get anything. Everything will go to charity. A year later, he had a second heart attack, which turned out to be fatal. The family rushed to divide the money again. However, it turned out that he kept his word. During his lifetime, he donated almost everything, leaving behind about $300,000. According to the will, most of the remaining money also went to charity, and relatives received symbolic amounts. We, the grandchildren, were left $10,000 each in cash, and were also told that the $300,000 could be used to pay off any student loans that I or my cousins had, and the rest should also go to charity. My mother, aunts, uncles, and his sister and her children each received $100. The only exception was my cousin. After her husband's death, she raised 3 children alone. Her grandfather paid off the mortgage for her while he was still alive and asked her not to tell anyone about it. We only found out about this years later. What is my secret? During his coma, my grandfather could not hear anything and was not conscious. I recorded all their arguments on my phone and then let him listen to them when he had recovered enough. It was because of me that they didn't get his money, and he told them that he heard everything so that they wouldn't attack me when they found out the truth. In 1994, my best friend and roommate died. His huge family was asleep at that time, and I didn't say anything to anyone for a whole hour. He had AIDS, Kaposi sarcoma, and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He did not regain consciousness for almost 3 days. 6 months before, he weighed about 77 kilograms and at the time of his death, less than 45. He looked like a skeleton covered in skin. A week before his death, his relatives, his mother, 2 sisters with their husbands came to visit him at our home. They all slept in the living room and in the guest rooms. Around 30 a.m., I went to see him after going to the toilet and just sat next to him. After about half an hour, his breathing became rare and heavy. I held his hand. After another half hour, he stopped breathing. I didn't wake anyone up because his mother would have immediately called an ambulance, started resuscitation, and started trying to restore breathing with a mask. She had already insisted that he stay in the hospital and was very assertive about it, but he himself told me and them that he didn't want all this. He was exhausted and without constant morphine, he was in severe pain. After what happened, I left the room and returned to my place. His sister found him about an hour later, and I never told anyone. Love and miss you, Charles. It was the summer of '64. I was 12 years old at the time. I was walking through the library parking lot and saw that the key had been left in the lock of a '61 Chevrolet Impala. I decided to borrow it and drive around the city for 10-15 minutes. Then I returned it to the parking lot, but parked it in a different place. I haven't told anyone about this before. Reminded me of a story my father told me. At the age of 14, he once took his parents' car, drove out onto the road, stopped at a traffic light next to a neighbor, and awkwardly waved to her. He was sure that he was finished. But the parents still didn't say anything. And he decided that she simply didn't get it that he wasn't 16 and didn't have a license yet. Years passed, and he and his mother moved back to the area where he grew up, and this woman and her husband still lived there. Dad had almost forgotten about this incident, but one day they were standing in the yard talking and a neighbor walked by, and she suddenly mentioned in passing that she had simply decided not to turn him in for driving without a license. When my mother's brother died, we went to clear out his things at his house. His sister was fixated on not missing a penny. Even though she had already gained access to his accounts, she was sure that he had hidden cash somewhere at home. While my mother was trying to calmly unpack things like a normal person, her sister took all the weapons and ransacked the house looking for money. I'll never forget her saying, "So screw it, find the money." In the end, she lost her temper and left, leaving everything to us, my mother, me, and my husband. My son was about 2 years old at the time. He was running around the house and suddenly found a jar with 11,000 in cash in the living room. We were simply shocked. I asked my mother if she would tell her sister about this, and she replied, "Yeah, I'll tell you." In the next world, we split the money and it's still our secret. My brother has a child from a one-night stand. That woman was much older and kept the child for herself. He doesn't know anything about it and doesn't want to know. When my grandfather died, his relatives decided to bury him with the family ring on his finger, the one that had been passed down from generation to generation and was ultimately supposed to go to me. The ring itself wasn't particularly important to me. It was worth almost nothing. But the very idea of burying a family heirloom seemed, and still seems, downright idiotic. On the day of the funeral, I quietly removed the ring from his finger in the coffin and hid it in a safe place. Several decades have passed, and I still keep it in a secret place. Someday, perhaps, I will pass it on to my grandson and tell this story. Or maybe not. I don't know. My precious. At a garage sale, my mother bought a small table that doubled as a locked display case for her spoon collection. I found that it had a hidden lock on the bottom. The key was glued nearby. I opened the display case and rearranged the spoons to form 3 crosses. Closed it again and hid the key in his room. All this happened exactly on Friday the 13th. The family was in shock. Nobody even suspected that the display case was opening at all. And, of course, I began to repeat this trick from time to time in bad weather, on Halloween, on the anniversaries of tragic events, on days when I didn't want to go to school. I did this almost all my childhood. In the end, after 10 years, my father simply threw away this table. He was tired of everyone constantly getting scared and yelling because of him. One of my ex-friends didn't even suspect that she was pregnant. She eventually gave birth in the 9th month. White powder was found in the child's body. All this time she was drinking, partying, and often in a complete stupor. She was about 10 years old. It later emerged that her ex-husband, to whom she had an unhealthy attachment, was still around. And this guy was convicted of CP and was on the register. Child Protective Services were called in because of substances found in the child's blood. She gave them my contacts and the contacts of other friends so that we could give her a positive reference. Everyone else remained silent and did not talk about the ex-husband who appeared next to the child. I told the officer everything as it was, sent him the court documents I found, and showed him that he was on the criminal registry. In the end, the child was taken away from her, and she simply went berserk. I didn't care because this child had no mother to protect him, and even among her friends, there was no one to stand up for him. After that, my conscience tormented me for a long time. I had a nervous breakdown and worked through it all with a therapist. But as someone who had been abused by my father as a child, I couldn't pretend it was not my business. From that moment on, I completely cut her out of my life, and I never regretted it. My best friend committed suicide when we lived together. He went into psychosis and literally stoned himself. I told everyone that I was sleeping and only woke up from the scream of our neighbor's girl who found him. I didn't actually sleep. I lay in my room in complete terror because I could hear him walking around the house, talking to himself or to someone invisible, and discussing how he was going to do what he had done. I heard him sorting through the cutlery and deciding out loud which one he should use. I myself sat in the room with a large hammer in my hands, ready to defend myself if necessary. I was really scared, and I never told anyone that I heard all this. At the same time, he was an incredibly kind person. There had only been one instance before where he had behaved strangely, but then it turned out that he had a family history of schizophrenia, and most likely it manifested itself in him as well. And another strange moment, when the police arrived, they didn't take us to the hospital to see him, but started interrogating us, as if it was our fault. Apparently, they found it hard to believe that a person could do such a thing to himself. In the end, they still let us go to him. The hardest thing was to see his mother lose her only son. This story changed me a lot. I still miss him. He was an amazing person, but sometimes I still feel like a coward for not coming out and trying to stop him. Changed? Thank you all for your kind words. This incident happened more than 20 years ago, and I have more or less recovered. Although sometimes I still think about what happened, rather with sadness and longing for my friend. Sometimes I remember his mother, especially now that I have my own child. And when something good happens to me, I sometimes imagine that he is somewhere nearby and looking after me in a friendly way. I just don't tell anyone the part of the story where I wasn't sleeping and heard everything. This is already something personal between me and the universe. In high school, we were planning to go on a short weekend trip as a class. There was a girl in our class with whom I had a very good attitude and with whom I enjoyed communicating. She grew up with her father, a veteran with PTSD. He was not aggressive, but often hot-tempered. She lost her mother when she was still a child. She died of illness. Despite this, she was incredibly determined, strong and self-confident, and never did she pretend to be a victim or seek pity. We were different in many ways, but it was this quality that gave me great respect for her, because I understood what she had to go through. One day we were discussing the trip and I was enthusiastically telling him how much I was looking forward to it. And she casually said, "Yes, I won't go. We don't have money. Okay, by the way, did you see it?" And then she changed the subject, and I just started screaming. It seemed terribly unfair to me, and the thought of it haunted me all day. So I decided to do something. I understood that she was too proud to accept money and would definitely be offended if I offered to lend her some. At home, I told my parents everything, and the father suggested an option: talk to the teacher, make an agreement with the parents of other students so that everyone would chip in a little, and tell her that a free place had become available from a travel agency. This usually happens when there are more than a certain number of students, but this time we were short. If no one had agreed, we would have paid for everything ourselves. The next day, I approached the teacher with this conversation. I just asked that my name not be mentioned, and she discussed this idea with her parents. Everyone supported her. Finally, my classmates informed me that a free place had become available, and she laughed joyfully at how lucky she was. She came with us and had a great time, and I never told anyone that it was because of me. It's not some kind of feat, but every time I remember this incident, I feel a warm satisfaction and am proud of that 16-year-old self. My time has come. My wife loves dueling. She even has a premium version that cuts out ads. Their store sells a stuffed owl. I bought it, hid it, then repackaged it, made a fake invoice with an address, and designed the letter in their style. A week after she reached her 1,000-day streak, I left a package at her front door. Supposedly a gift from dueling for this achievement. There was a greeting card inside. "Welcome to the Thousanders Club." The wife was absolutely delighted and felt incredible pride. Now this owl stands on her desk next to her computer. I initially did it as a joke, but she was so happy that I could never admit it. In 1995, my mentor killed a man. He was a war criminal and, in fact, deserved such a fate. But that's another story. When the mentor died of old age, an illegal pistol was found in his home. True, not the one from that story. The police have launched an investigation. However, the body was not released for burial for more than 6 months, citing an ongoing investigation. In the end, we had to go to court to bury him at all. I have his written confession and detailed documentation of that murder, including how he contacted that man. I was ready to hand everything over to the police and give them the opportunity to solve a serious international case. But since they decided to act like, I will not give them anything. I never really stopped thinking about killing myself. I just have a feeling that I missed that moment. And now it's like I'm stuck in this life and I can't just up and leave for the sake of others. Edited, I really didn't expect so many people to respond to this comment. For those who asked, I have been on medication for a long time and was in therapy for almost 10 years. I'm almost 30, and I've been living with depression since I was about 11 years old. I do not have anything planned, so don't worry. It gets a little easier to cope with, but it's a long process, and the feeling doesn't go away completely. For those who are experiencing the same thing, I hope we can figure this all out one day. If we're still here, then we probably have something to live for. Thank you all for your support and your words. My husband found a little chick in the yard. Apparently, his life was difficult from the very beginning. He was missing one eye. We watched him for a whole week. He learned to fly from the ground, and his mother brought him worms. My husband even put a bowl of water out for him. We named him Barney and were really worried about him. One morning, I went out to check on him and saw that he was dead. He was lying on his side, covered in ants. I put it in a box, threw in a flower I had picked from the garden, and took it away. When the husband woke up, he asked about Barnya. I said that early in the morning, I saw him take off and fly away with his mother. He was very happy and said, "It's a pity I didn't see this myself." Now, when we see a similar bird, he says, "What if it's Barney?" And he looks to see if both his eyes are in place. I anonymously wrote to a woman I didn't even know and told her that her husband was cheating on her. The letter was only 4 lines long. How long has this been going on that he accuses her of alcoholism? Who is he having an affair with, and that for Christmas he gave his mistress the same jewelry as her? They got divorced. She started going to Alcoholics Anonymous and is now living her best life. And his mistress left him when she found out about the identical gifts. I found out that my grandfather's story, that he was an ordinary German soldier during World War II and simply spent too long in Soviet captivity, was actually a lie. He served in the SSS and was in service in Svensson for about a year. He was later sentenced to 3 years in prison in Poland. He died more than 10 years ago, and I didn't tell anyone in my family about it. My father had a very warm relationship with him, and I don't see any point in destroying that image. 10 years ago, on what would have been my best friend's wedding anniversary, the first since his death, I anonymously sent him to Dave Kvotov. The note contained just a few words. I hope you feel loved and happy. I didn't sign up to avoid awkward thanks and explanations. A couple of months later, I overheard her telling my wife about